Hello and welcome to another episode of the Auto Guide Show. This week we drive three heritage-rich off-roaders. Kyle drives a hybrid, not a minivan. I drive an EV SUV, and some supercars are getting pretty super. All right, so we'll get started this week with a three-way comparison we did quite a while ago, but it's taken a little while to get it all nicely edited and put together. We took three classic off-road, heritage-rich, iconic nameplates off-road, but they were all very different from one another, and they've all had very different paths.
Yes, and even though we have comparison as the biggest word on this video thumbnail, we say it pretty early on in the video that it's not a regular comparison because we're not actually comparing these three individually because they're very, very different as their respective top trims. Well, in the case of the Bronco, it's not the top trim, it's just the top two-door trim. But yeah, you can't really compare a Land Cruiser, the new Land Cruiser, or any, against a V8 Wrangler. That's just nuts.
Yeah, I mean, we should have had the Raptor, like you said, the top trim there. And the pricing would have matched up better with the Wrangler, but the pricing on the Land Cruiser is pretty high too. But yeah, I mean, comparison works in a very literal sense because we're showing how each one drives, but it's not a shootout head-to-head or anything like that. It was just featuring the top special edition of each vehicle as of 2024. So we had the last edition of the 392 V8 in Tescador pink, of course.
Although now it's not the last edition because there will be a 25 model because Jeep just can't quit those V8s.
Although the Grand Cherokee is losing its V8. I guess it's just the Wrangler. Yeah, I guess they underestimated demand, and I would be not too happy if I bought a 24 for six figures to find out that it's not the last and it's not going to appreciate and it's not going to be good. So
yeah, I'm sure if it's titled Final Edition, it'll still appreciate. And also I don't feel bad for people who are buying six-figure brand new off-roaders. I just can't.
I remember the outrage when the Demon 170 came from Demon owners who were convinced that was going to be the ultimate Challenger. And like, how did you think that was going to be the ultimate? Until it was out of production, there was always going to be something better.
Yeah, there was always going to be one final one. So
anyway, back to these.
Yeah, so these are all interesting, and this isn't a cop-out, but because we're saying this isn't a regular comparison, they all have their strengths, and we talked about it, about how each one, you could make an argument for it being the right choice if someone was shopping roughly in this market. Like, money no object, I think it's safe to say you would definitely go for the Wrangler because, you love V8.
It's just a silly big vehicle.
Yeah. And the Bronco is cool as heck because the retro styling works so well on it, and it got so much positive attention, and it's just not as shouty as the Wrangler, and it's easier to drive on road.
Just a quick aside on the Bronco. So I was just at a tire event. We drove Broncos. Actually, I did the Ford Bronco Rodeo
cool.
in Utah, Moab. And they had 4 and 2 doors for us to drive. I was in a 4 because we had a passenger, but seeing the 2 and 4 side by side, the 2-door looks so much cooler, like so much. Whereas with the Jeep, it does too, but not as much. But like a 2-door Bronco just looks awesome.
Yeah, even my wife would say that. Like, she loved the look of this, and whenever we see a 4-door, she's like, "Why does that not look cool?" I'm like, "Well, it's because it's 4 doors. Like it ruins the proportions." It's the same with the Defender. The Defender 90 looks cool as can be.
I like the 130. Sorry.
Yeah, and then of course, so we're giving all. But
you're right. The 110 is the one that I think looks odd because it just stops at the back. So either give me the wagon or give me the 2-door. Like, anyway, yes. Back to this comparison. So so the Ford nameplate came back from the dead after what, like almost 30 years? No, 20 years. 30 years? Yeah, almost 30 years.
30. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next one that you're going to talk about, it never really left, but it's gone through quite a few changes.
And it definitely left for a long time here in Canada. But yeah, the US, the Land Cruiser disappeared 2-3 years ago. Not very long ago. But this one is now the Land Cruiser Prado in other markets, but it is just Land Cruiser here. So we're getting the lower version in the sense that it's smaller and cheaper, and it has a hybrid 4-cylinder. And we've talked about it a lot over the last year because I feel like I just keep getting trapped in one. Not literally. The doors work fine. I don't think there's been any sort of recalls for it. It's just that I drove the first drive. I took it up a mountain with contributor Jeff Wilson at the beginning of summer. I did the Toyota Kenreki, and the Land Cruiser was on one of our legs, and we drove that again with Jeff. So I've become very familiar with this vehicle, and it's not as hardcore as the other ones. We know that going in, but most of that you could probably fix with, I mean, just better tires, maybe a suspension lift. But it's so much friendlier, right? Like it's comfortable and it's well damped and quiet inside, and you know, you have ventilated front seats.
Well, we had a 2-hour drive to where we did the off-road test, and we let I think you drove the Wrangler out there and I drove the Bronco, and not having a solid front axle makes a world of difference on the highway. The Bronco, it's not the best highway vehicle, but it's so much better in just staying straight in its lane than the fighting with the Wrangler. Although, in fairness, the 392, for some reason, maybe it's the extra weight on those front wheels from the giant V8, it is the best Wrangler I've ever driven highway wise. I had to drive it myself 6 hours round trip to where we picked it up. And yeah, like compared to like the most recent Gladiator I drove, or the 4E I drove last year, or 4X, whatever, the hybrid.
4xe?
4xe, yeah. This one tracked okay. Whereas then the Toyota was like driving a Crown limousine down the highway compared to these two.
Yeah, it definitely feels softer.
And so going in, like, we knew it had the lowest ground clearance, and it's actually surprisingly low for an off-roader. It's
less ground clearance than a Crosstrek Wilderness.
Might have less ground clearance than the Solterra, but anyway, and it had the most street biased tires. But some of the stuff we did there, none of it was too hard, like at all.
No.
Like the stuff I did this week's way harder, but we had to be careful with these cars. We can't bounce off the rock sliders or scrape the skid plates or any of that. And the one hill we did climb, I thought the Toyota would have trouble because of its street tires, but it did really well. And like you said, throw in some mud tires like the other two have, and maybe somehow lift it up a couple inches, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah. And then you still get that really friendly, comfortable interior. And I mean, although I say that it's friendly and comfortable and spacious, it's not exciting, right? Like I feel like that's something that kind of matters when you're spending this amount of money. And the interior of the Land Cruiser is just really boring. There's no way for me to say that.
It probably has the best quality, but you're right. It's very drab. The Jeep isn't overly exciting, but it's just Jeep. Like, they've never changed. They can't even fit a wireless phone charger in there. And then the Ford probably had the lowest grade interior, even though it's the premium, but it was the coolest with the red lettering and the colored plates, and I like that interior.
I find it interesting that you think it's low quality. I thought it's at least on par with the Toyota. The center console is a little cheap feeling, but like everything else just looks really good. The seats look awesome.
Yeah, no, it's the best looking. I just don't know if it has the best materials or fit and finish. I honestly, I don't remember, but I remember like the Toyota just feels like your typical high-end Toyota, whereas the Ford, you felt like you're in something cool, like you're stepping back, and the handles built into the dash, I will forever be a fan of. That is such a cool little design feature on the Bronco.
Yeah, and they're not just handles, right? Like they've got like a little bit of grippy rubber on them, but only at certain spots. It's well designed.
But we were told that the Ford Bronco Rodeo, it's to get in and out of the vehicle, and it is not for passengers to hold when they're off-roading. They said unless you want to get some dental work off the dashboard by yourself.
Yeah, that doesn't. They don't seem ideally placed for that.
You have a grip handle on the left, and you can put your arm on like the armrest, and that will brace you enough. All right, well, we talked enough about that, so let's move on.
Yeah, let's just immediate cut.
So you went and drove the new hybrid Carnival, which I think might solve most of its problems, but I don't know. You tell me.
You're right. Oh, can we pause for a sec? So the top of the Carnival again. All right. Sorry, Wyatt.
So moving on, you went down south to drive not a minivan that is finally hybrid.
Yes. So that makes it the only minivan that, or sorry, that means there's only one minivan left that doesn't have a hybrid option. Yeah, I drove. Oh, Kia's already gonna hate me. I've said minivan so many times. There, I did it again. The
But what
2025
are you going to call it?
Kia
Are you going to go
Carnival
with the Canadian,
MPV.
or is it an LUV?
It's the big love. Although I feel like maybe they don't want to associate with that show either. Anyway, it's Kia's hybrid power plant in its biggest, most practical vehicle. It makes so much friggin' sense. It's kind of shocking it took this long. It does have some changes, I should point out too. It has a more powerful electric motor than the other regular hybrids in Kia's lineup. So it has a little more power, and it means that it can run on EV power for a little bit longer, say when you're accelerating from a light before it has to ask for help from the gas. Yeah, it's really good. I always liked the Carnival well enough. One thing that has haunted me here at AutoGuide is when it launched, we actually had, this was before you came back on, Mike, but we had the Pacifica and the Sienna, both of which were updated that year too, at the same time as the Carnival when it launched. So we did a three-way comparison, and we placed the Carnival last. And I've always felt a little bad about that because it's a really good vehicle. It's just it missed out on the efficiency of the Toyota or the swankiness of the Chrysler. And now, well, you still don't get the swankiness. Although you do get those trick seats, right? The full recline second row.
It already had those, but
yeah,
no, you're right. We did Pacifica against this last year, and the Pacifica had a higher price point, but we said like the 6-cylinder lets this down because it's really thirsty and it's not all that powerful, whereas the 6 in the Pacifica is so smooth. And I think we even had the plugins, so
we
also got extra hybrid. And then the Sienna is probably less refined in terms of drive than the Carnival, but you're getting such crazy fuel mileage you don't mind. So I think we need to now try to get ourselves one of these and a Sienna hybrid for comparison soon.
Which is also facelifted for 25, not facelifted, updated for 25. Yeah, the fuel economy is a little bit better in the Toyota, although I found this should be able to hit its rated numbers pretty easily. We were up in the hills outside of San Diego, so it was a little hard. But yeah, overall, I think it's a great family vehicle, or even just a vehicle for people who need to move a ton of stuff. But people are going to struggle to buy it because the image is still a stigma.
It's a SUV though. It's not a minivan.
It's true, yeah.
We're gonna have to get the Sienna Woods edition or whatever they call that. So it's
Woodland.
More of an SUV. Yeah. SUV
and then,
SUV.
And then we'll take both of them to the same trail we took the off-roaders, and we'll see which one does it better.
We'll see which company will talk to us after.
And that.
So speaking of off-road, look at that segue. I went to the west coast of Canada to one of my favorite places in North America, Victoria, on Vancouver Island. It was interesting though. They didn't have us downtown. They had us in the burbs. So it wasn't as picturesque, but it got me more of a taste of what actual life is like there. And yeah, I could live there. Anyway, that's beside the point. So the Solterra has been out for a year. And even in 22, it was on sale as a 23, but there were some delays, let's just say. They had to try to keep all the pieces on.
Yes.
So they're really going for a huge launch now in 24. And they've actually done updates in 24. It isn't just here's the same old. And they base the updates off of consumer information from the previous one. And I kind of thought like, what, the 6 people that actually were able to get a 23 told you what they want. But the big one is it can charge faster in poor conditions. So it only charges at 100 kilowatt, which is like slow for the class. But they said in extreme cold, it could do like 80 minutes faster on 100 because the battery, I guess, would precondition as well. So they're trying to basically work with what they have the best way they can. It has like 215 horsepower and it goes 222 miles. So like power and range are way down on the competition that's almost on top of it in price. I mean, it's slightly lower than an Aria or a Mach-E, like equivalent, or even an ID4, but they all have more power and more range. And it's not like this is a tiny battery. It's still 72 kilowatt hour, 72.8, I think.
So It's the smallest in the class, but not by much.
Well, I mean, it's no smaller. Oh, yeah, it's slightly smaller than the Mach-E's non-extended range and the
Oh yeah.
ID4, but they both still go, even on those batteries, much further. It's about the same size as the VinFast, and it goes a bit further. So, yeah, like driving it, I've always kind of said it's an electric car for Subaru owners that want an EV, and it wouldn't have much other appeal. But driving it, I can't believe how comfortably soft the suspension and seats are. The seats have good side bolsters, but not enough that you feel stuck. And they're so cushiony, and the suspension just absorbs everything. And I was like, okay, so it's got that going for it, but is that enough to, lose out on the other things? And then the second day of our drive event, we went off road, and some of the stuff this thing did off road with its stock tires, I could not believe. Like, we're doing way more extreme stuff than we did with the actual off roaders, and it had poured, so the course was all slick and muddy. And the X Drive, because it's an electric car, could really play with the torque vectoring to the wheels with the brakes and whatnot. So it really does just spin one wheel here and there to get traction. And it has a thing called grip mode, which I didn't know about, and it's really cool. So you turn on, and there's 5 levels you can adjust with a toggle, and it's a set speed that the vehicle will maintain automatically no matter where it is. So if you put it in the middle, it's about 3 miles an hour.
Okay.
And like on a crazy steep hill, it will just keep, like, even if it's stuck or the wheels are spinning, it'll just keep giving more and more juice to try to keep the 3 miles. And it's crazy. It's like you put it on, it's like a roller coaster, and it just pulls you up without doing anything. As we beat up the hills, we needed to intervene and give it a bit more throttle at times, but it still climbs. So yeah, it's low power, but I mean, there's still more than enough power for daily driving. It still will outrun most other compact SUVs on gas.
Yeah.
It's just we're spoiled by crazy powerful EVs. The range is the big one. But if you live sort of remotely and you have a stage 2 charger at home and you want to explore, all the different trails and ponds and camping spots within a couple 100 miles, it could work.
No, that's a fair point. I think you said on one of the recent episodes that a lot of people buy cars based on spec. And I think that that's a really important note here where, yeah, on paper, this is far from a class leader. But like, if people didn't buy just based on numbers, what you said earlier makes a lot of sense too. Of like, look, there's got to be some crossover between Subaru buyers and people who just want EVs. And a related car on this platform, the Lexus RZ, it's the same sort of thing where, as a luxury EV, it does not stack up to the competition. But you know how loyal Lexus buyers are. They're going to go into a dealership. They're on their third RX. And they're like, you know what? I kind of want an RZ because I want to go EV, and I don't want to go to another dealership. I want to go here. And in that sense, it works. And I think, honestly, the ranges, yeah, it's not great, but people who are buying this probably have another car. That can be their long road trip car. This is the one that they use for everything else through the week.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I know they're not expecting to sell a ton of these, but being in Victoria, maybe they did this on purpose. I always thought the BZ4X it looked okay. Wasn't like anything special or anything terrible. It's just there. This one, for some reason, I like the look better with what they did on the nose, and they put like basically cross-track taillights on the rear, which is pretty cool. And when I shot at this exact spot, it's a little overlook along the side of the road in a residential area. I had 4 different people come up and comment on how nice the car is, and 2 of them like surprised me. They're like, "Oh, I've been reading about this. I want to get one." And I was like, "Really?" And then it kind of occurred to me, you know what? Victoria is the perfect place because the island's only so big. There's tons of great natural places to look. It's a very sort of eco-friendly area. Like, that's the customer, because they will never do over 200 miles on a trip unless they go on the ferry to the mainland. But then you have also public chargers and stuff over there. So yeah, I think that's sort of what it's for. Is it's not meant for the New York City dweller or the person commuting into Atlanta every day. It's, I think, more for sort of the people who live in medium-sized towns that are a little more remote.
Yeah, I'm looking up at a BZ4X right now, BZ4X, because I can't remember what the differences are. And yeah, like the Solterra doesn't have the weird eyelids, does it? Above the lights, and it's got the rectangular LED signature that Subaru has, and a filled-in regular shaped grille that you'd see on a WRX. Like, Yeah, I see what you mean. Like it's the nicer looking of the two.
Yeah. All right, so moving on. Speaking of things that aren't changing, BMW says the next M3 will keep its straight six engine, which I
Wicked.
didn't know was a question it was going to lose it. I just assumed it would, but I guess things can change. But it'd be like Subaru saying, here's a WRX, but it's not a boxer. It's a 3-cylinder sideways
Well,
engine.
I guess the concern is after Mercedes made the let's say divisive C43 and C63 four-cylinder, maybe people were like, "Oh no, is BMW going to do that too?" And their four-cylinder is fine, but the inline six is like one of the best engines on the market. So
And in that comparison, in fairness, the original M3 that everyone wants for ridiculous money, it was a 4. But then after that, it's been a 6 since. So we're going on like 30 something years.
well, and one V8.
Yeah, that's true. There was that one V8. Whereas Mercedes, like their first AMGs were supercharged 6s and big V8s and then turbo V8s and they even had some 4. So like they've been all over the map. So it's not like the C63 had this 35-year pedigree of mostly a V8. It was sort of a generation. It kept changing. But
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it is part of BMW's identity. Just like I said, like Subaru with a flat engine, Porsche with a flat engine for the 911 and
yeah.
the Boxsters and stuff. Like you just, yeah, I just don't think they could name it like I don't know what an MI for, or I don't know how I'd call that, but with the EV. But
I imagine IM3.
but then you
I
start
don't know.
thinking you're watching Tom Cruise's latest movie, so
I
maybe that
mean,
doesn't work.
BMWs are featured in all of his movies, so maybe it's all part of the plan.
Small cross promotion.
I so I can say this because by the time this airs, I'll already be on the plane to the event. But I wonder if this means that the M3 is going to become a plug-in hybrid and gain 1,000 pounds for its next generation.
Yeah.
Do.
I love that 6-cylinder, but it's just a generator. And moving on to a new car that was teased. So the Acura ADX, which we've talked about a couple times here, we actually first found the patent way back in the day for
We
it.
did.
They gave us a silhouette picture, which is an SUV with Acura taillights. Like that could be an MDX for all I know.
Yeah.
But the important thing is they're like literal 2-paragraph blurb about it coming said turbocharged power. And I remember we discussed that, so it makes sense. So it's gonna have the 1.5 turbo in the HRV platform, and yeah, so at least, I mean, maybe they'll drop the 2-liter in, but I don't think that. But it's not gonna have the
RDX. Okay, well, good. Okay, because I didn't catch that because I haven't read. I saw the picture and I was like, oh, it's a teaser, and so I just kept on living my life. But okay, good. Turbo, that solves everything. I hope it looks better than my very awkward Photoshop.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the taillights don't look any different. So I'm just trying to find the exact quote, but I don't think I'll be able to. It's what they said. Oh, wait, here's the article. They said, no, it doesn't say here. Oh yeah, it said they expect to utilize gas powered turbo. So they said turbocharged power, Acura luxury, blah blah blah. So yeah, 1.5, I'm sure.
I assume that they're going to just use a touchscreen too, because they're slowly exercising that touchpad out of all the models.
If the touchpad's in this, then we know we're doomed for a long time to come.
Yeah, so it should be fine. I don't know. I mean, good for them. It could be. It's a weird class, right? There's the GLA, the Q3,
The X1.
What does Buick make?
In that size, it would probably be not the GX, I always get their names confused. Invista, or is that too big?
The Invista's front drive only, so like it's bigger. But
not the Invista. No, the one that goes between the Encore GX and the Enclave.
Envision, which is like based off like more RAV4 size, but it's kind of I don't know. Anyway, yeah, there's options. I mean, and there's the Lexus the UX, which is very old,
which is better,
very very efficient. So yeah, I mean, cool. I mean, they need a new entry model because everything has gone up, and as good as the Integra is, people want an SUV. So
maybe they can pair the 1.5 turbo to the hybrid system in the CRV.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
So speaking of fun, McLaren finally introduced the W1 that we made fun of the name on the show previously. They have rationale that F1 was a nod to Formula One, and they're using it in endurance racing, and then P1 was sort of a play on pole position or first position in a race. And then this one is world champion, I think, something.
World 1. We're going multiverse. Even supercars are doing it now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's 50 years since the team won its first F1 championship, 74 maybe. I don't know. I'm not good with F1 history. Listeners, please correct me on that.
Yeah, please tell us why. So the thing we're not talking about is the actual car and what it does. So it looks great. It looks like a somewhat modern P1, but there's also a little F1 in there. Like they did a really good job designing it, and it looks like a proper hypercar and not a Le Mans car for the street.
Yeah.
And it makes over 1,200 horsepower, which is just ridiculous in a hybrid system with a V8 in the back and electric up front.
Is it still the Nissan V8? That's like, it's impressive. Don't get me wrong. When the P1 came out, it was what, 900 horsepower, and now we're 300-ish more. But like, we're very quickly, or we already hit the whose line is it anyway moment of like, none of these numbers really matter anymore. Half of these cars are going to be puttering around at 8 miles per hour around Monaco's streets.
But anyway, like to your power thing. So when the Veyron came out at almost 1,000 horsepower, that was like, holy cow, and the top speed it could do. And then the Chiron's at like 16 or 1,500 horsepower. But the thing is, that's a big, heavy car. And it's designed for top speed. It's not a track car at all. I mean, it's quick, but it's more like, look at how stable and fast we can go. This thing weighs just over 3,000 pounds, and it's got almost 1,300 horsepower.
Oh,
and
jeez.
When you get to full speed, the actual active arrow isn't the wing goes up. It actually folds out backwards and extends the tail by like a foot to be like a long tail for better high speed stability, like the old F1 long tail that like dominated in racing.
Yeah, I noticed that in the image, and that is a really cool feature of just like, just slide back there. And actually the shadow kind of highlights that. It looks
It's not even
great.
extended in that photo, I don't think.
Wait, that's the standard setting? Oh, geez. It looks very cool. It's very strange to me. So McLaren made a huge deal about the Senna years ago, and I was very fortunate enough to poke around one and sit in it. I didn't get to drive it. But there was all this talk of, it looks the way it does because it has to, because it's so focused on track performance, and I'm willing to bet this is quicker around a track, and it looks excellent instead of challenging.
Yeah, well, I think the Senna was designed as the ultimate track weapon, but this just a power will overcome it. And I think you're right. I think that is the deployed spoiler at the back. But that's a very fast car. And they're if you want to buy one, they're all spoken for, all 300 and whatever they're making of them are gone.
$399, just like I think the P1 was also $399. Not the price. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Snapping back to Acura, we found another patent where Acura trademarked RSX and Acura RSX, which is interesting because if they were worried another company in another industry was trying to use RSX, you would only patent RSX because no one's going to use Acura RSX. So it makes you believe that there's a reason that they need to get that name back in. Some people will say manufacturers just apply to renew their patents every time one expires, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Like this one was already expired. So anyway, I have a prediction that I made that it may just be a concept that maybe we see in LA or in New York, but Honda does have a two-door electric coupe coming out using a historic name, the Prelude, and maybe there'll be an Acura version that you call the RSX because they're not going to call it the Integra because that's already taken. So that's all I can think is of how it would work into the car lineup.
But so I see where you're going with that, and it makes sense, like logically, except for the RSX was the Integra. Like
I know.
they were the same thing, and it'd be very confusing to make. So in the last 10 years, Honda has killed the Civic Coupe, and we only have a hatchback and a sedan now. And then there will be a Prelude, which is obviously based on the Civic, but it's a hybrid coupe instead. And then there's the Integra, which is the hatchback of the Civic, but it's the Integra. And then they're going to make an RSX, which was the old. It's so.
Were you not around in the 90s?
I tended to try to avoid most of it. No.
In the
It's
90s,
very weird.
You had the Integra that could come in 3 body styles, the Civic that could come in 3 body styles, and the Prelude Coupe that had a slightly larger engine, but would compete against the Integra Type R. And then you had the Accord Coupe. And
my thinking
Honda's
is
just getting back into their thing.
Yeah, my thinking is just, you know what, if there is going to be a Acura version of the Prelude, just call it Integra. Integra seems to have done so well in terms of sales, of boosting numbers, because the ILX never really sold. So I don't know, like the RSX existed for what, 5 years? It's not really a
they didn't want to use the
historic name.
Integra name. Yeah, they didn't want to use Integra. I mean, in North America, it has some name known because like the Type S was pretty cool and it looked good, and it was launched right in the heart of that compact tuner. So it was one of the cars you saw like done right up. So in North America, like I said, it was called the Integra in every other region. Only car nerds like us really know that, and owners would have known that. But if they're trying to have it appeal, I don't know. But I still feel like Acura's trying to get away from car names, but not SUV names, and all their SUVs have an X in it. So could this be an SUV? Oh, jeez.
I was just gonna say maybe it's gonna be a coupe over. It'll be like an RDX coupe, RSX.
That probably makes more sense than the Prelude, unfortunately. You'd have ADX, RDX. They could start. Well, no, because ZDX is still D.
RSX for a coupe over makes more sense, because to counterpoint your thing about like only car nerds really know that the Integra was the RSX, only car nerds care that this name is brought back after 20 years. Like no one else has any sort of fond memory of it. So
it's probably a concept car, because like it's not a name that like we need to, like if they were going to dig into the past for whatever, like Legend is probably a name you bring back first before RSX, or even bigger. Like
especially, have you seen some of the stuff out of the Tokyo show this month with Honda's EV concept? They're targeting high end for their first bespoke EV. They want to do something like a Model S competitor, and I'm just like, make it Acura, make it the Legend. So yeah, sorry, got sidetracked there.
Don't make it the Relax. All right, and we're just about to finish our stories. You did a 1-year follow-up on Forza Motorsport, which is great, because I remember we discussed Turismo years ago when it hit its 1 year and the like different game it was, and then after 2 years it became like a different game again. Forza's done the same, right?
Oh, don't we wish? Yeah, thanks for including this one, because there were a few milestones for racing games this week, but I want to like Forza Motorsport so badly because it has one of the best car lineups of any track-based racing game. There's there's a Matra Simca right here. Like, where else are you going to drive that outside of a mod in Assetto Corsa on PC? Very cool stuff. They finally added back some tracks. They've really focused on that for the first year, so it now feels like the content is there. But if you're an offline player like me, there's nothing to do. There's no drift mode. Not that I ever really used it, but still, that's a big thing for the community. It's still gone. Photo mode is somehow worse than Horizon 5's. And I mean, the racing aspect is just not there. There's 4, maybe 5 main racing championships in the regular game, and then there's these ones that cycle out every couple weeks. So you could finish all of the available offline races in less than a day. And then you just have to wait for the next ones to load up. And the annoying thing with those cycling ones is there are cars attached to them as prizes that are only available in those. So if you don't race in the 4 or 5 weeks, then you lose access to that car. Apparently, that is actually something that's going to be fixed soon in an upcoming update. But yeah, it's frustrating. It feels like it's close, but it's, to your point about talking about Gran Turismo, it's not the same. Like Gran Turismo had its stumbles, but it became pretty polished. This still needs work.
I mean, that's the Gran Turismo way, right? They did that with 5 and 6. It's interesting. Forza Motorsport sure sounds a lot like Gran Turismo Sport. When it first came out, you had like 3 offline races. They added a bunch of content, but it was just, here's a whole whack of races, but there's no reason to do them because you didn't really earn money. I mean, you did, so you could buy cars, but you couldn't modify cars. Like it was a very different game.
Oh.
And I remember the rumor that the next Horizons is gonna be cross-platform and might come to PlayStation, and it's like, should I get excited?
Ooh, I mean, yes, Horizon's a ton of fun. It's an open world game that just happens like it's the purest definition of a CarPG.
Yeah,
yeah, but it's
because the last
like,
couple of Need for Speeds have been like that.
And you just reminded me, the car progression system is something that thankfully Turn 10 did fix for Motorsport. So when the game launched, there was this really weird ultra linear approach to modifying cars where it's like, no, you can't unlock any mods until this level, and you can't buy them. It's just there's like car XP and you have to unlock things, and it's always the exact same order. So if you bought a car, let's say a Demon, then you're like, you know what, I bought a car that's already super powerful, I just want to improve the handling. Too bad, you can't until you're at a certain level. It was a terrible setup. So that's thankfully gone, and you can now modify cars how you want. But
yeah, that's good. I was just gonna say a game that's similar sort of to what you're saying about the weekly races was the Crew 3. I played it a lot. I pretty much beat the game, and it then had a very cool approach to how you finish challenges, then the extra missions you could do and all that. And then they started having weekly things, and then it became, if you want certain cars, you had to get so high in the weekly thing, and it'll cycle back, but like, when's it going to cycle back? And it has a crazy lineup of cars too. Like they have some cars in there that I've never played in a racing game, like 58 Cadillacs and stuff like that. But yeah, let's just hope this improves and the next one's better, I guess.
Yeah, here's hoping.
All right, so we're gonna head to the question of the week in a second, but just a quick aside, we didn't cover this yet because it kind of just happened last night, but HOS and Toyota are teaming up. That's gonna be very interesting.
I thought you were going to say Cyber Taxi, but okay, yeah, that's
yeah. I'm talking about something that's actually going to happen in the real world and be something substantial. Yeah.
Wait, are HOS and Toyota not just asking people to give them loans years in advance, and then maybe they'll make good on their promise years later? Or is that just is that a Tesla thing?
I think all those Model 3 owners that were promised their cars would be autonomous taxis within a year, 7 or 8 years ago, are still waiting for the payoff. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, so that's interesting. It's not like Toyota's coming back and they're going to put their engine, but the specific wording is Gazoo Racing, so GR, is going to help develop with HOS, so basically make their cars competitive and better. And in turn, the teams that Gazoo has is going to lean on HOS's like marketing and business side. So it's like,
okay,
it should be an interesting partnership. So I mean, I'd assume they're going full in for 26. Like I don't think we'll see a payoff next year, but it's just interesting how, I mean, on the F1 segments I'm with Colin and how excited we already are about 26 with all the returning manufacturers. Like Honda's coming back, not necessarily to make an engine, but they'll be there. Ford is making an engine. Audi's coming in. Like it's going to be an interesting time because it's going to be like the old days where every team has a name back to it, even if it's not actually their car.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't remember Toyota being particularly impressive in its F1 history, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe they'll be better.
But like a HOS GR Toyota car is going to be running a Ferrari engine, which seems weird. And Renault has already confirmed they're probably running Mercedes next year. So it's getting a little, or sorry, not Renault, Alpine. Anyway, let's move on. So we'll do the question of the week, and then we will have our special guest from Cadillac, and then be back with what's next. All right, so question of the week this week is one I thought of called "What automotive design feature do you not understand?" And I mean, there's the obvious ones we've harped on before, like the Acura trackpad, But I was thinking of one that reminds me of a situation Honda had years ago where they brought out their cool infotainment system and everybody, customer, dealer, media said, "Where's the volume knob?" And there was so much outcry, it came back in a couple years. And my equivalent right now is GM and Apple CarPlay. I don't know who in the company got convinced or convinced everyone that they're only going to use Google and it won't matter. I think they've highly underestimated how attached people are to their smartphones and how much they're more loyal to that than a car company. If they think people are going to like, oh, if they buy a car, they'll convert to Google or they'll just use Google in the App Store on the car and make an account, like they're not going to do that. They're going to, I don't think it'll be a deal breaker. I mean, for some people it might, but if there's an equivalent car that has it, they're just going to go there. Like you're alienating so many people over probably some partnership that's not going to bring you as much money as the sales. Like I don't use it as much as you do, but I use it for Waze and just the integration with text and everything. And every time I drive a new GM car, I'm like this is it's like driving my 2009 Hyundai Genesis Coupe. I have if I have to mount my phone to be able to use it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a Google account. I'm not going to make one. I'm not going to download stuff off the Play Store. Like I already have enough subscriptions and whatnot around the world. So end of rant.
First, I just want to welcome you to our side. Our side is wonderful. I appreciate that you are now on the GM. What are you doing with CarPlay side? I'm gonna echo it. I was trying to figure out what you meant by this question of the week because I was like, what do you mean? Do not understand? I don't understand the complexities. I was like, oh, there's a bunch of aerodynamic things I don't get. But you just mean you don't understand why it's happened.
Infotainment systems I don't get.
But you're right. You're. I think one of our friends, our colleagues, Robbie DeGraff, he's an analyst, and he's posted some stats about it's something like 80 some odd % of people consider CarPlay a like basic necessity in a modern car, and so it's like, okay, so 4 out of 5 people are just going to skip any GM product, any GM EV that isn't a Lyric. Or no, the Hummer also had it, right? I think.
I drove it. I should know. I think it did, but what I'm afraid is it's going to bleed into their other vehicles, the gas ones too.
It has. It's already started. Yeah. The Enclave doesn't have it. The Honda Prologue does, though.
Well, back to Honda. How it started with this is, I would be shocked if it doesn't come back in 3 or 4 years like Honda did with the volume knob, because I think, even if you don't physically see your sales down because of that feature, like there's already so many people saying like, it's like saying, I don't know. Oh, it's like saying, oh, here's our car, but it doesn't have any windows, but you don't need the windows. It's fine. You just drive.
Tell Polestar. Polestar might be listening.
Yeah, it's weird because especially like living in a major city, I always use Waze because it's so real time. It tells you where everything is because it's other users doing it. And people say, oh, it already has its own Google navigation. Yeah, but I need some sort of subscription to have it run properly. I mean, it's not showing me as real-time stuff as Waze is. So
yeah, and I think I don't remember if we've talked about that recently on a podcast, but that is the unfortunate side effect of this, right? It's like I have a Gmail account, sure, but like if I get into a modern GM car without CarPlay, if I want to use Spotify, I'm going to have to log in. Well, first I'm going to have to download the Spotify app into my car. Then I'm going to have to log in on the car, and then I'm going to have to make sure that it has an active data plan, or else I can't actually stream my music. Whereas I have all of that just like sitting on my phone right now that I could just pair to the car. It's so frustrating. I've understood one argument about this, which is that sort of forcing people to use the native nav is better for getting a good estimate on EV range and where to charge, and taking all that into account, the current battery state if it's prepped. I get that argument, but for everything else, let me use my phone.
And if you have an Android, I mean, you're going to be okay because it will integrate and work. So, I mean, like that side, it's no different for them. So they wouldn't understand, like, well, I don't care, I have this, and that's great. Like then that car is fine. But like you said, I don't know the split in the world. I mean, it's not 50-50, but it seems not far off that one way or another. So North America, not the world.
It's very dependent on market, right? Like North America actually skews pretty iPhone heavy. And like I want to take this opportunity to say that when I get into a car that says, oh, it doesn't have Android Auto, or like wireless CarPlay but not wireless Android Auto, I think that's kind of lousy too. Like I think both of them should just be treated evenly. I know that it's probably a ton of hoops to jump through in the back end, but like, yeah, it's just frustrating. Everyone uses their phone.
To your point, like we're in cars all the time, so it's a little different for us. But if you own one of these cars, you would have to do what you said, like download and get an account, and it can use data because the car can have Wi-Fi. But after your trial, which is not long, you have to start paying for OnStar Wi-Fi because it's the car, it's not your phone, or you're gonna have to switch yourself to a complete CarPlay like phone. So
Yeah.
I just think it's not like this. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's this crazy deal in the sense of like it's impossible to do whatever, but I just know how people are, because modern age, there's just so much choice and we're lazy that people just be like, oh, I don't want to have to download one app, like as meaningless as that seems. So anyway, that's my thing on that topic. Otherwise, I love their infotainment system.
The rest of it's good. Since we both went on a rant about this, can we just count that as my answer too? Because I don't really have one in the same sense. I was going to talk about how I really don't like that mostly the Korean brands, but yeah, I think it's mostly them have their turn signals really low in the bumper. That drives me nuts. I don't.
You know who doesn't drive nuts? Body shops. They love it. Like first time I saw one, I thought, if you get in the most, like if you just bump a wall backing up, you're cracking your entire housing. You gotta go buy a new one. Like and it's not like it looks cool either. I just don't get it.
No, it looks weird. And it's also, I mean, as more and more people drive high riding vehicles and people don't give proper space when they're stopped at a light, you can't actually see, or like people behind you might not see that you have a turn signal on or your hazards on or anything. And I've understood that apparently that's the reason they're so low, is because certain markets have requirements that hazards need to be seen even when the tailgate's up. BMW does a weird thing where it has its own separate hazard lights built into the frame of the iX liftgate. But yeah, I don't like the turn signals separate. It's weird, and everybody's eyes naturally gravitate towards tail lights to figure out if a car is turning, not down in their bumper.
I blame the Ferrari California. It started this trend.
Oh, geez. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's all its fault.
Okay, look at these giant cool taillights. Oh, they don't work.
They're useless.
All right, well, that's enough for the question of the week. Moving on, we are going to talk to Cadillac about everything Escalade. Very interested in this because it's really the only vehicle in that class that's got a 3-prong attack. Oh, and it's pretty much the only one left of the V8 too, which is pretty cool. And then after that, we'll be back to take a look at what's ahead.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome back. This week we have a special guest joining us from General Motors. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do, please.
Hi, I'm Donnelly Baxter. I'm the Global Marketing Manager for Escalade and Escalade IQ.
All right. So yes, that will be our topic for this week. That's probably one of the most known vehicle nameplates, definitely North America, if not the world. Everyone knows what an Escalade is, and it's got its refresh this year. So we just have a couple questions over that. I have driven many Escalades and always appreciate them. I almost got in a V, but just missed on timing. But the IQ I'm really interested in too. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. So first question has to do with the powertrain. So a lot of the other big body on frame SUVs have gone to turbo 6 cylinders of some sort because that's sort of what other products in their range are doing. The Escalade still gets a V8. How important was it to keep that V8?
Well, we really listened to what our customers were looking for, and they love our current V8 engines. They're effortlessly powerful. They've got a linear power band and really a tried and true reliable powertrain. They love the standard 6.2, and then of course we've got the Escalade-V with our supercharged 6.2 with 682 horsepower, 653 pounds-feet of torque, and you can't mistake that engine note anywhere. So we really have the best offering for our customers based on what they're looking for. And for somebody who's looking for electrification, we've got the all-electric Escalade IQ. So we really deliver the luxury of choice. If you'd like an ICE powertrain, we've got exactly what our customers know and love. If you're looking for that electrification, we've got the IQ, which is our first ever all-electric Escalade. And both of them are on dedicated platforms. So the ICE vehicle, the internal combustion engine, is designed from the ground up to be an ICE platform. And the Escalade IQ is built on our Ultium platform, and it's an EV from the ground up. So we really didn't have any compromises from one platform to the other. We didn't have to shoehorn in two different powertrains into one common chassis. So it allowed us to maximize both and be as efficient and effective with both. So ultimately, we really just listened to what our customers were telling us that they wanted.
All right, well, that's going to lead to my next question, but just quickly, it's good timing. I'm happen to be driving the CT5V Blackwing this week, so I know exactly about that engine note. I may or may not have the exhaust wide open all the time to listen to it. But the regular 6.2 I had in a Sierra Ultimate Denali not too long ago. And it too has the sport exhaust. And it just adds a nice little rumble, which you aren't going to get from the other competitors anymore. So happy it's still there. So back to the customer. Has the customer base... Sorry, yeah. Has the customer base been more or less the same over the decades of the Escalade, or has it kind of evolved over time?
I'd say it's evolved as the product has evolved. We've continually added more technology, more features, more specs, a higher level of craftsmanship. So every generation moves forward than the one before. And we're maintaining our loyal customer base, but also bringing in new customers with all of those generations. So comparing most recently our K2, so our previous generation, to the current T1 generation Escalade, we've seen the average age of our buyers drop a little bit, the average household income go up. So we're getting a younger, wealthier buyer. Being that they're younger, they often have more children still at home. So it's a great family vehicle. And what I love about it is that it's really a do-everything vehicle, which is essentially what our customers are looking for. They live a no-compromise lifestyle, and they're looking for a vehicle that delivers on everything in one package, be it comfort, luxury, 3 rows of space, something with a big, bold presence. And these are often highly successful customers. And they're really looking for a vehicle that represents themselves, the level of status and success that they've achieved in their life. And they want the vehicle to be an extension of themselves, a representation of where they are in life.
That's great. You've actually really covered some points in the next question. So this is great. Another lead in. You really covered how the Escalade and the Escalade IQ are different platforms, different purposely built vehicles. My question is, were the current customers requesting for the all-electric Escalade, or is that more of a case of trying to bring in some new consumers from maybe other brands?
I'd say it's a bit of both. Our current customers, we did have a dedicated base that loved the ICE vehicle, which is why we've redesigned the Escalade ICE to bring all of the technology that you'd expect in an Escalade to the EV world and to the internal combustion engine world. So regardless of what powertrain you'd like, we offer both. And then we had a subset of customers who really wanted to go EV. They loved everything that Escalade stood for, the size, the space, the technology, the comfort, the luxury, but they wanted that in an electric vehicle. We also had people outside of our Cadillac family who were looking for exactly those attributes, and there just isn't really anything in the EV world to deliver. So based on our early hand raisers for Escalade IQ, we're seeing kind of a healthy mix of customers who are either currently in a nice Escalade looking to switch to EV, and then a lot of either competitive ICE customers wanting to make the switch to the electric Escalade, or a lot of customers who might be in an EV that doesn't deliver what they wanted. They just kind of had to settle for what was available in the market. And now they're really interested in the IQ because it delivers everything they want in a vehicle and it's electric.
Yeah, you brought up a good point about the competition, because there's a handful of 3-row EVs out there now for mainstream and luxury, but nothing really to the scale of the Escalade. So it is kind of entering a new segment, and it's always good to be first in those segments, try to establish yourself. Speaking of, sorry, yeah, go on.
As I said, we're really giving the luxury of choice to our customers. We had buyers that wanted ICE, and we've redesigned our ICE Escalade for 2025. Buyers that wanted that EV future today, and we've got that with the Escalade IQ. And we share a lot of that technology, the curved 55-inch pillar-to-pillar screen, our power open-closed doors, our up to 40-speaker AKG audio systems. So regardless of which Escalade you choose, we've kind of got an equal offering in terms of tech and features and functionality from one to the other.
I had a different vehicle this summer that had the soft closed doors, and I always thought that was a gimmick. And then taking my son and my dad, who's a bit older, on a trip, the amount of times they wouldn't fully close the door, and instead of saying, "Oh, reopen it," they'll just do it. And then taking that now a step further, that the door will fully open itself. That's pretty cool. I can't wait to try that out.
It's amazing.
So you brought up,
Sure.
So, and it's all 4 doors, right? Like, I know the driver can do by fob, but they can control all 4 from inside.
All 4 doors are power. You've got a front command center, and if you've got the executive second row, you've got a rear command center. And from there, you can close and open all 4 doors. So if you've got kids drop off and they're on the passenger side, you don't have to get out and open that door anymore. You can simply open it from the comfort of your driver's seat. And I like it. I went to a restaurant with friends the other day, and it was raining outside. So I went and got the car, pulled it up front, and opened the front and the rear doors for the friends to just hop in. So really nice and practical. And to your point about the driver's door, you can have it set so that if you have the key fob in your pocket, it'll automatically open as you approach the vehicle. And then another setting that we have is the automatic close as you apply the brakes. So simply hop in the vehicle, press the brake pedal, and your driver's door will close. So
that's cool.
That's something that I've gotten used to. I've been driving an IQ for about 5 months now or so. And when you get back into a vehicle that doesn't have power doors, that's when you realize just how much you love the feature.
I assume there's some sort of proximity sensor on the door, so it doesn't try to open into potentially a parked car beside you.
Yeah, we've got sensors built into the door handle area of every door. So if there's a person or a garage wall, a car, whatever the obstruction might be, it'll detect that and stop just shy of the obstacle.
Yeah, makes sense. You touched on this earlier, the 55-inch screen, which I believe is the biggest now out there. How does it divide up into segments, or is it divided into segments, or can you customize sort of the whole thing any way you want?
Yeah, well, it's one continuous 55-inch curved piece of glass. Behind that piece of glass, we've got 2 displays. You've got a 35-inch driver's side and then a 20-inch passenger side. Okay. The larger 35 section is kind of subdivided into 2. It's the same screen, but you've got a gauge cluster area behind the steering wheel that's not touch activated because we don't want people reaching through the steering wheel. And then the center portion of the screen is touch activated. Then you've got the passenger side that is also touch activated. If there's nobody there, it'll be either in a kind of a screensaver mode that says Escalade, or if there's a passenger, they've got a sub menu where they can stream some of their favorite video sources. You can browse the web. You can do a lot with it. There's a QR code that you can scan with your phone to make your phone become a digital remote to control that screen. And we've got active polarization on that screen. So if you think about the privacy screen you'd put in your cell phone or something on your laptop so that people beside you on a train or a plane can't see what's on your screen, we have a digital version of that. So anytime the car is in park with the passenger, the driver can see what's on that screen. But as soon as the vehicle goes into drive, we digitally activate that privacy screen so the front passenger can view what's on their side, but the driver's view is completely obstructed. So there's no distraction to the driver as they're driving down the road.
Yeah, that all makes sense. That's what I was curious with the screen. So like the driver information center and what you'd call the traditional infotainment are both there. And I've driven a couple cars with that passenger screen. And it's another thing you think, is this necessary? But then my passenger starts using it and they're doing something. I have my nav up or something and they want to dig through some settings or whatnot. So yeah, it's really cool. And I think it's just sort of the next evolution of keeping people entertained up front without distracting the driver at the same time.
Yeah, and what's nice is that if you're in park, the driver can see the screen. So if you're in a parking lot waiting for kids' sports or something to be done, driver can watch whatever the passenger is watching. But when it's in drive, that automatically activates, which not many vehicles do. I think they're either fully polarized all the time or they just simply don't offer it. So we give, again, that luxury of choice depending on what the driving situation is.
Yeah, I haven't come across one that isn't fully polarized yet. So, because I think the screen's off and then someone will hop in and I forget it's there and they'll be like, oh, I got a screen. Say, oh, right, yeah. We just need people to start shooting in 55-inch wide format, and then we could have, movies or shows going across when you're parked.
That's the next step.
Yeah, mobile driving. So we've talked about a lot of features, and the final question is, I think you may have already answered it, but what do you find is the most impressive feature on the new Escalade and Escalade IQ?
There's too many to name. I think one great feature that isn't new, but we've had it for a while now, but is just underappreciated is Super Cruise. Especially if you're in the Escalade IQ, you've got around 740 kilometers of range. If you're in the Escalade Ice, obviously it's always been a great road trip vehicle. And with Super Cruise, you can turn it on. It'll take the wheel. You still need to focus on the drive ahead, but completely hands-free. And it's amazing just how effortless driving becomes. And you don't realize how much energy you exude driving until you get to your destination feeling so refreshed after driving with Super Cruise. And you think about what it was like before. I've got family that's about a 7 or 8 hour drive away. And it's just amazing to hit Super Cruise, get there refreshed and ready to join the festivities that are going on rather than needing to take a nap or decompress or feel better. So I think Super Cruise is amazing technology, works in rush hour traffic as well. And in terms of just the audiophile in me, we've got up to 40 speakers from that AKG studio reference audio system. So 40 if you've got the executive second row, 36 if you have the standard captain's chairs in the second row. But that delivers such an immersive 360-degree experience. You can't not fall in love with it. We've loaned Escalades to musicians who listened to the stereo and bought the Escalade because of how much they love that audio system. So I think that just speaks to how incredible it sounds.
Yeah, not many companies offer the in headrest speakers for a second row. It's usually first row. It's only just driver. But just quickly to your Super Cruise point, when I had the Lyric a while ago, I took my 9-year-old son out for a drive, and he was blown away by what it can do. And I live in a really traffic crazy metropolitan area, so it, like I said, it still works fine, but the other drivers are dive bombing you all the time. But when I have to go to Detroit, which is about a 4-hour drive, it's so nice because that's one of the most boring stretches of road, and just takes, like you said, you're still paying attention, but it takes a lot of the just constant muscle stress of having to keep your foot on the gas or your hands on the wheel. Yeah, it's great.
Yep, and it's got automatic lane change as well. So if you're approaching a slower moving vehicle, it'll check your blind spot, signal, turn into the passing lane, pass the vehicle. Once you're past the vehicle, it will signal to merge back in front of the vehicle and do that all hands-free. Or you can trailer hands-free as well, which is really special. Trailering takes a lot of focus, and it's amazing how much easier and effortless it is with Super Cruise.
Yeah, I haven't been able to try that yet. That's the next thing I want to do. I'll just have to bug some of the local PR people to let me borrow a trailer and an Escalade. But I thank you a lot for your time. It's got me more interested in trying one out once they become available. It sounds like some nice updates, and obviously the IQ is something that we've never experienced. So I look forward to trying it out and see how it works in the real world.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, hopefully talk to you later.
Bye.
All right. So just to wrap it up, because we've had you guys listen to this a long time. Hopefully you're still with us. So this week I was in Utah, as I mentioned earlier, testing a tire on the Ford Bronco Rodeo. And I have the Chevrolet Silverado EV RST for review. I won't go too much into it because I want to save that for when I actually finish my review and have my final thoughts. It's like I'm just in these big GM EVs lately, it seems.
Yeah. But I imagine it was quite a shock going from the event back into the Silverado.
Oh yeah, got back. It's like, oh, this is so smooth because I'm not driving a Bronco with all-terrain tires, across the rocky desert floor.
Yeah, and then I stayed home this week, not because I got under the weather, but I mean, yay! I'm glad I'm dealing with that now. And I'm driving another Ultium vehicle, the aforementioned Honda Prologue. It's funny that we tend to both be in Ultiums at the same time. Similarly, I won't talk about it much, but that's also because I just haven't driven it that much yet because I've been waiting to get better. And yeah, it was nice to stay home, but that will be short-lived because I'm getting on the road tomorrow. So actually, when this recording airs, I will already be gone on the next trip, and I'm gone on 4 trips back to back to back to back. So our next episode, Mike, will probably be me somewhere else.
Yeah. Or not here. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Next week I have no car, which is nice because I have a lot of catching up to do. So that'll be nice. But it's a short week here in Canada, and for 2 days I'm going on an event myself. So we'll have lots to talk about next week.
We will.
So until then, thank you for listening or watching the Auto Guide show, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
So long, everybody.